I remember having a discussion with someone at the conference who had started a business, and he was sitting at the resource fair, and he was telling me kind of how he started his business. And he was like, someone kept reaching out to me on LinkedIn because he wanted me to repost or post a blog. And he's like, and it turned out that that person was like one of the top guys on LinkedIn. And he said, that blog changed my life. He's like, that blog is what launched my entire career into coaching. And it really got me thinking into, man, how one simple act, one simple question can change the trajectory of your entire life. And so that was my first key takeaway.
Welcome to Your Story Doesn't End Here, the mental health podcast of military and veterans who refuse to be silenced. I'm your host, Rachel, and my mission with this podcast is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice, bring awareness to mental health issues, provide value and solutions, and to change the culture when it comes to mental health within the DoD organizations.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Your Story Doesn't End Here. If you followed last week's episode, you know that I went to the Military Influencers Conference. I was there because I was supposed to be part of just one panel that was at the marketplace stage at the Signia by Hilton in Atlanta. And that panel was all about empowering the most vulnerable populations, the younger generation of veterans. And I really, really enjoyed that panel. I'll get into more about that with the episode, but I actually ended up being a part of two panels when I was there. I ended up getting on the parade deck. If you know what the parade deck is, you know. If you don't, parade deck is a platform for influencers, content creators, podcasters, and the military community. And it's pretty new to me. I wasn't super familiar with Parade Deck. I had a great introduction to it by Greg Bernard when I was there, but was so grateful for the opportunity to get on two stages when I was there. But the reason that I'm doing this episode today, for those of you that followed last week and then kind of followed my social media and saw, the little snippets of Mick, it was actually a 3-day conference. I was only there for 2 days of the actual conference itself. I was at the Signia by Hilton in Atlanta for 3 days. The first day was just kind of like like a check-in, get settled in, intro kind of day. And the other 2 days that I was there was like full-on conference days. And so a lot of the questions that I get are, how was the conference? Oh my gosh, it looked amazing. I've been following your social media. And I want to start by saying that social media is the very, very, very small snippet of reality, right? So most people are going to take pictures of their best moments on social media and post those because those are what are exciting, right? Like those are the things that you want to share and you want to remember. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing that the really good moments are posted on social media, but I want to give a full breakdown of everything at the Military Influencers Conference and my experience and what I thought about it. And you can kind of form your own opinion about it from there. So I get to Atlanta. I have a friend pick me up at the airport. And, when I get to the hotel, I meet a couple of people that I had known from social media for a while, but I had never met in person. And so the panelists that I was with, the millennial veteran, Jenna Carlton, she was on the last episode 2 Mondays ago, since we're every other week right now. Incredible human being. I'd never actually met her in person before. But the cool thing about social media is that social media makes us feel like we know people, even though we don't actually know them, right? It makes us feel like we have this connection to humans, which is such an incredible thing if used in the right way. And so I felt like I already knew her. And then I also met Tyler Heisey. He has recently changed his social media handle to the Tyler Heisey. If you don't know who he is, he puts up mental health content and some really great content for our not only the veteran community, but I think all communities, because mental health it affects everyone, right? And so I got the chance to meet Tyler as well. And the other panelists kind of trickled in the rest of the day. So Michelle Lang, she's with the OH Rural Salute nonprofit that focuses on rural communities and veterans. She was on the last podcast episode I had as well. And then I met a couple of other new people. And so, this isn't the first conference that I've been to before. It was the first military focused conference that I'd been to. And the things that I learned from conferences that I've been to in the past is that, you want to meet as many people as you can. However, I will throw in the caveat that every person is different when it comes to conferences. I know people that will meet 100 people every single day, and they will just start building those connections, right? For me, that's very overwhelming. and I focus on quality over quantity. And so there's a lot of people that I actually did not get to meet at the conference that I would have loved to meet. But literally by the end of my last day there, I was so burnt out socially that I just needed a break. And so that's okay too. I just wanted to point that out if you are a conference goer or if you have not gone to a conference, but you're interested in one, is that everyone's a little different when it comes to the social aspect of conferences, and that's okay. So first day was just kind of chilling out. I honestly don't remember a whole lot of what we did on the first day. Probably help if I pulled up the agenda, but I don't have it on me right now. So we're just going to wing it. And my memory is not always the greatest. So, but first day wasn't an actual conference day. Registration, checked in, all that stuff. The second day started out with a talk, a small panel about mental health, and it was presented by USAA Wounded Warrior Project. And I have a couple of thoughts and opinions about that panel in particular. So I appreciate that the large organizations are getting involved in the mental health movement, because this is something that it affects everyone and we need everyone to be involved. So I really, really appreciated that. With a lot of the larger sponsors for this event, I did feel that there were some parts of conversations that just felt a little sponsory to me and not real and authentic. And it's not to say that the people on these panels didn't have like a real and authentic connection to mental health or whatever the topic is that they were talking about. But from the outside looking in, for someone that's just a listener in the audience, to me, it felt like we were pushing more sponsors in some aspects than others. And I say some because there were panels that I attended that were absolutely moving, incredible, amazing. And I was like, wow, we need more of this in the community. And so what was not really unique about the Military Influencers Conference, but I guess I don't even really know the word to describe it. For some, it could be a little overwhelming. You kind of have to plan out your day based on what you want. So there's a bunch of different breakout sessions happening all day long, every single day. There's always a resource fair happening all day long, every single day. And then there's all these other like little mini hangouts happening that other people are organizing kind of on their own. And so you kind of have to decide, like, where do I want to spend my time? Where do I want to spend my energy? You have to understand that it's okay if you walk in a panel or a breakout session and you realize it's not for you and you want to go spend your energy somewhere else. And so I kind of pre-planned my agenda for the day, went to things. If it wasn't a good fit, I left and went to something else, or I just took the time to take care of me, because self-care is important too. And so I think the first day was full of a lot of those like breakout sessions. And the first day, Tuesday, the first day of the actual conference, was the day that I had my panel. And so a lot of my personal energy was focused towards making sure that I could do the best I was going to do with that panel and put out some really awesome information. And so we reviewed some panel questions ahead of time. We met up at the marketplace stage a little bit before our panel, and we had a really, really awesome discussion from a lot of different perspectives about younger veterans, mental health, community, and what that really looks like. And so I think it started a really awesome discussion. One other thing that really stood out to me about MIC, short for Military Influencers Conference, is that there wasn't a whole lot of younger veterans there. And when I say younger, I'm talking like 20s. And I get it, like that's kind of one of those weird age ranges where like, yeah, they might still be active duty in their 20s because people join at different points. 20s is kind of a hard age to get out to a place like that. And maybe it's an issue of affordability. I mean, the Signia by Hilton cost $1,000 for 3 nights to be there, and that's not affordable for everyone in their 20s. And so maybe there's a deeper discussion that needs to go into that of, how do we attract more younger veterans to events like this? Because I think it's important for all age ranges and demographics to be at events like this, because that's how we truly get these incredible conversations going about how do we create change within the military and veteran communities. But I would say the age range was more 30s to, God, I mean, there was like some really old people there, probably 80s. Not like a ton of really, really old people, but I did see a few in like wheelchairs or walking around. And so, yeah, I mean, the age range I would say was definitely on like the mid age to older side of attendees that were there. But there were still some younger people there too in my age range. And I'm 30. How old am I? 31. I think I turned 32 this year. You forget when you turn 30. From there, it's 30. And, I'm just 30. So anyway, yeah, the panel went really good, had some great discussions after, connected with some amazing people. And it was because a specific individual, she goes by Miss T on her Instagram page, and she attended my panel. And it was because she attended my panel and was engaged in my panel that I made the decision to go to her panel. And I'm so glad I did, because her panel was all about MST, which, if you don't know, stands for military sexual trauma. And when I tell you, I've never in my life heard such a real discussion about military sexual trauma. I've never heard a group of presenters or one presenter go on stage and use the correct terms. I mean, there's one individual who's up there who her thing is saying, call it what it is, right? She's like, we don't just call it MST because that dampens what it is. It's rape. And the entire audience was in tears when they were talking, and not like, oh, I feel bad for you tears. I think for me, it was like that personal connection tears, like, wow, it's refreshing to hear someone talking about this in a real way. It's refreshing to hear a conversation about military sexual trauma that isn't sugarcoating it, because a lot of the military trainings, like, they've gotten better over the years. They have, but I think there's still a lot of sugarcoating. And I don't think that that's on purpose. I think because when you're putting out a mass training to an organization the size of the Department of Defense, you have to find something that's effective, but also checks the box, right? And so for them, it's really hard to be like, hey, let's get these women in or these men in to constantly share their story over and over and over and over and over, which can be kind of a traumatizing thing to ask someone to do. And so I get it. Like, I understand why that doesn't exist in our everyday trainings, but I was like, these women need to be on like the main stage. They were on the marketplace stage, which was kind of tucked away in the corner of the resource fair, which is the same place we had our panel. But it was the most powerful panel that I attended the entire conference. And I'm so, so grateful that I took the time to be there. So Therese has a book, which I wanted to highlight. I'm going to have her on the podcast, so you guys will hear more about the book. But I'm going to pull it up on Instagram really quick so I can tell you guys more about it, because I just enjoyed the panel that much. So Miss_T_Garnier, it is called No Longer Silent. And I'm going to go ahead and put the link to it in the show notes for this one. And then when I interview her, I will put the link again. But I had the absolute pleasure of being on a stage with her and another incredible woman on the parade deck on my second day at being at the conference. And that was kind of a last minute throw together panel. I actually didn't know it was going to be a panel until a few minutes before I was on the stage for it. And what was really cool to me personally, and what was really meaningful to me, is that the only reason I got the opportunity to be on the parade deck stage, and they stream live and they have a YouTube channel and, you know, their whole community, is because I asked the question, do you have space on the stage for more people? And that simple question, which I got the answer to, yes, we have like 3 spots left for tomorrow. Let's get your name on the calendar. Let's make it happen. That simple question is what got me in front of more people to share my story, to share my voice, to share my message. And that, along with another thing, I think is what my 2 biggest key takeaways from the conference were. And so I'm going to share the first key takeaway, which, you know, surrounding what I was just talking about, is that just asking the question can get you opportunities that you might never would have thought would exist in your life. Greg Bernard had some incredible discussions with me and shared some incredible value with me. And I would have never got that value had I not asked that question, because, you know, the stage part's one piece, right? Like getting in front of the people, the audience on the live, in front of the parade deck audience, and, you know, all that's great and all. And that's one thing. And I'm super, super grateful for that. Connecting with the other panelists is a whole other thing. Super grateful for that. But it's those discussions, those, you know, after we're done or before we talk and we're chatting for a few minutes, and we're just kind of swapping stories and sharing value with each other, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes those things can be life-changing. And I remember having a discussion with someone at the conference who had started a business, and he was sitting at the resource fair, and he was telling me kind of how he started his business. And he was like, someone kept reaching out to me on LinkedIn because he wanted me to repost or post a blog. And he's like, and it turned out that that person was like one of the top guys on LinkedIn. And he said, that blog changed my life. He's like, that blog is what launched my entire career into coaching. And it really got me thinking into, man, how one simple act, one simple question can change the trajectory of your entire life. And so that was my first key takeaway. My second key takeaway was in observing. And so one of the intentions that I've had for really this last half of this year is to observe more, to listen more that I'm speaking, and to just be observant in all situations I'm in. And I'm still working on that. But when I first got to the conference, I didn't really recognize a whole lot of people because I don't really admittedly follow a whole lot of social media influencers, and I don't try to spend a whole lot of time on social media like that. But there was one individual that I did recognize, Janae, and her social media handle, Janae Perfectly Flawed. She calls out a lot of sexual predators in the military, and I really respect the work that she's done. And so I knew that I wanted to meet her before the end of the conference, but she's also a very popular person. And so in my head, I'm thinking, like, I don't want to go up and interrupt someone when they're in the middle of doing something, or when they are, in the middle of talking to someone. And like, these people that were really popular at the conference just constantly had groups of people around them, right? And so me being me, like trying to be polite, I'm like, let me not cut someone off. Let me not walk in front of someone in line, or, just start talking to someone. But what I noticed in observing is that everyone who wanted to meet someone, or wanted to say hi, or just get 2 minutes to take a picture, or say thank you to someone, they literally just walked up and got done what they needed to do. They walked up to that person, they struck up that conversation. And what I noticed is that, if that person didn't have the space for it, then they would now have to speak up and say, like, hey, I have this right now. I can't really talk, but I can give you like a minute of my time or something, right? It pushes the ball in the other person's court. And some might see that as rude. I think I really did at first, but then I started to notice that this is kind of what everyone is doing, right? Like, people took control of their own narrative. And if they wanted something, they just went and got it. And so it was very empowering for me on the second day of the conference. If I wanted to speak with a group of people, or if I wanted to talk to a particular person, like especially after that panel about MST, is just going up on the stage and taking a picture with these ladies who I was so inspired by, and having a conversation with these ladies who I was so inspired by. Whereas Rachel on day one of the conference would have sat there and waited at the back of the line that I assumed was forming in my head. And yeah, I mean, I guess the key takeaway for that is, like, if you want something, just go get it, and allow the other person to tell you no if that's not something that they want. Obviously, respect space, respect boundaries, be able to read the room. If it's the wrong place and wrong time, just don't go up and, interrupt someone in the middle of what they're doing. But don't create these limits in your own head that don't exist. Because I think that's what I was subliminally doing, is that I was constantly telling myself, well, oh, they look busy, let me not bother them. Oh, they look like they're doing this, let me not bother them. And by going up and just talking to these people and realizing that, oh, I'm really not bothering anyone, I'm just creating a barrier and a limit in my own head that didn't actually exist in the first place. It was so much more empowering to kind of break through that mental barrier that I had. And so it was really interesting to me to know that the key takeaways that I had were not at all what I expected them to be. I think I expected like standard conference takeaways, like, well, I attended this talk and like I really learned this and this and that, and I connected with this organization and I learned this and this and that. And like, don't get me wrong, I did learn a lot in the talks. I attended a podcasting talk. I attended the MST talk. I attended a podcasters meetup, connected with a lot of people individually that I'm really excited to have on the podcast. And, I think all in all, it went really, really well. What I would say to anyone who is considering going to a conference like this is, I would say do it. Why? Because it's not always about the actual conference itself. It's about the connections that you're making and the people that you're surrounding yourself by. If you are an advocate in the military space, if you are active duty, if you are a veteran, if you just want to build community, if you don't know what you want, you just know that like these are the people that you've been around for the last few years of your life. And like, I just need to figure out my next step. I just don't really quite know what that is. Or maybe you just are lonely and you need community. These are the places that you want to be ultimately. Don't take advice from anyone who's never been where you are, is one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever gotten. And so I tell active duty all the time, you're getting out of the military at some point, start connecting with veterans. Doesn't matter if that's 10 years, 15 years, 4 years down the road. I connected with someone at this conference who was 19 and a half years in the military and still hadn't even started talking about transition or looking into transition out of the military. And like, it's like beating a dead horse sometimes with active duty, especially the ones who have been in a really long time, because no one thinks that the transition stresses are going to affect them, but they affect all of us. And so I always have that conversation with people of like, connect with people, start your transition process now. No, I'm not just talking about your VA disability. I'm talking about the community piece. Prepare yourself for what's going to happen with your brain, knowing that you're going to have this like just drop of dopamine that's natural, and we all go through it, but you want to prepare yourself as much ahead of time as you can so that's not so bad when you get out. And I think places like the Military Influencers Conference, there's another conference coming up end of October called MCon that's happening in Vegas. I will not be attending that one, but know that there are spaces that are created to help you build that community. And a lot of these people that attend these conferences, they are incredible people for you to be around. Be your judge of character, right? You know, you're not going to connect with every single person there. Not every person there is going to be relevant in your journey, but I guarantee you there will be at least one person there who resonates with you, who connects with you, who can maybe help you to the next step in your journey, or who can maybe give you a different perspective that you've never thought of before. For people that are struggling with maybe the financial aspect of getting to conferences like this, you know, rooming up with people. My roommate that I had for this conference, I had never met in person a day in my life. I know that sounds kind of sketchy, but her and I did meet virtually, connected very, very well. And actually, to be completely honest with you, didn't even really see each other much the entire conference because we were kind of doing our own things separately on our own schedules. But there are ways to make it happen. And if this is something that you are really interested in attending next year and you need help brainstorming creative ways to make it happen, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to any of my panelists. Any of us, I'm sure, would be happy to be just a sounding board and give you a perspective, a real perspective of what our experience was, what we would recommend, what we wouldn't recommend, things like that. I really spent most of my time, actually I spent my entire time at the hotel. And so the actual conference itself wasn't super expensive, but you know, I think sometimes making that financial investment into ourselves just to get around that community, or to maybe take a chance and find that person who maybe will help us change the trajectory of our lives, I think it's worth it. And so all in all, would I attend MIC again? When I was there, I was like, I don't know if it's worth it, but yeah, I would attend MIC again. And it's because of the people that are there and the community that I got to surround myself with. And so, yeah, that's really my overall thoughts on it. I would love to see more of those raw and real conversations from the people that are doing the work. I would love to see that on the main stage. I understand where sponsorships have to happen, and I understand where they need the highlight of the sponsorships. But I think when you kind of shift a bit of the narrative a little bit to where it doesn't feel so much about profits as it does people. And I'm not saying that that's what it is. I'm just saying that that's kind of how it felt for me. I think when you shift the narrative and you pour into your people, you pour into your speakers, the people that are taking the time out of their lives to come out and fly out from all over the country to be there, I think that's when you really start to see massive growth in events like this. And that's what my true wish for the Military Influencers Conference is to build this space in this community where it's not just about putting people in a room together to build community, but it's about pouring into your people and your community and giving people space to talk about the actual work and advocacy that they're doing in their respective areas of the military and veteran spaces. Because there's so many incredible people and organizations out there doing the hard work every single day that they get their spot in the spotlight and they get their highlights in different capacities. But I think these are the places where it's most important to give them the spotlight, because that is going to get them in front of that audience that needs to hear their message and needs to hear their voice. So that's that. If you have any questions for me, or if you want to reach out to me, or, you know, anything, chat at all, you can reach out to me through my website, ysdeh.com. You can also reach me on any of my socials. They're always tagged in the show notes below. Please follow the social medias to help get more of the message out to the world about this podcast. I am going to do my best to start posting on social media a lot more to get more of the message out to the world. It's been a little difficult the last few weeks. I'm not going to lie. Depression has been kicking my ass, but I'm a little refreshed and renewed after being in Atlanta for a few days and being around that community. So feeling a lot better now and ready to keep moving forward, even if it's just a little bit at a time. So always appreciate all your support and just sharing the episodes and rating, reviewing, anything like that. Those small actions, they really mean the world to me. And I appreciate it so, so much. So we will see you guys next time with an absolutely incredible episode. I'm actually really excited for the next one that's coming out. So stay tuned every other week, every other Monday at 5 a.m. EST. These episodes release, and always share with your friends, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for taking the time to listen in today. With your support, we are able to increase awareness of the mental health issues affecting service members and veterans today with the goal of creating positive change. If you got value from this episode, please take 30 seconds to subscribe and share this episode within your own network. Until next time, remember, your story matters, your mental health matters, and your story doesn't end here.